here's my review of Michael. I really enjoyed this movie. Full disclosure, I am a huge Michael Jackson fan, so I will admit that yes, I am biased. But I remember I went into this movie hearing a lot of the criticisms. But even after watching this movie, I'm confused because a lot of people were complaining that this movie is just like a bunch of music montages and there's no real character depth. Did we watch the same movie? This movie literally opens with the Jackson 5 practicing, minus Janet for some reason. Even though, I mean, she wasn't in the Jackson 5, but still, like, she's just not in this movie for some reason. It's just kind of weird. But anyways, this movie literally opens with Michael and his brothers just practicing singing and dancing. And as soon as Michael just messes up, like, his dad will just, like, start beating him. And it immediately just sets a tone of this, I guess, for lack of a better word, I mean, just like dark and somber tone for what is relatively like a upbeat rags to riches kind of story. And that's one thing I just found so confusing after I watched it. I'm like, why are people saying there was like no depth or substance here? There's a clear dynamic between Michael and his father Joseph that I would really say is the heart of this movie and the conflict. Like, and we just got to talk about Coleman Domingo as Joseph Jackson. He is so good in this movie. Like, as great as Jafar is, and Jafar is great as Michael Jackson. Coleman Domingo, like, whenever he's on screen, like, you kind of just want to shut up and listen. You're like, you're terrified of him, and he's just so terrible. Like, he is the villain of this movie. And this movie is about Michael trying to break away from his father, trying to make it on his own as an artist. And as he quickly rises in popularity, Joe is kind of trying to attach the Jackson family to him so he can basically live off of his success. In this movie, it does feel a little too fast-paced because for as big as this story is, this movie's only about a little over 2 hours. And I know that there's going to be a part 2, but like, it does feel like really quick of the quick rags to riches story of them starting in this small town, like in this small tiny house, and quickly getting like a big mansion once Michael becomes successful, as well as like the Jackson 5. But I will say in terms of pacing, I think it moves a little too fast, but I still really enjoyed it. And I think that Miles Teller is great in this movie. I think all the performances are great, but I will say, like, although I do think like Jafar is obviously the best performance in this movie, like Miles Teller is great in this movie. And I love the scene when Michael's in the scene, or Michael is in this room with a record company, and the way Miles Teller's character just tells him exactly what he really wants, and he's the only one who feels like he can communicate with. It's just great. And I think another thing that this movie does really well is it does a good job at showing Michael's loneliness, as his only real friends were like his butler and all of his pets. And it really just kind of, like, watching this movie play out, it kind of makes you, I guess, understand or more just comprehend like why he maybe turned out the way he did and some of the stuff that happens later on in his life. And this movie does not go into that. And I know some people are going to hate it between that, but to be fair, this movie is about Michael Jackson's rise from the Jackson 5 up into like him becoming a superstar in the 80s. So a lot of people who want this movie to go into the allegations, like, they may call it cheap for not addressing. I mean, that's not what the movie and story's about. So, I mean, if they do that in part 2, maybe then it should definitely be there. But it's like, that's not what the movie's about. So I think that's a pretty weird criticism, because, I mean, the movie ends before that happens. So, and I think that this movie does a really good job of just showing how just like much Michael Jackson cared for his fans. Like when he got burned in the Pepsi commercial, and when he was just like being dragged to the hospital, rushed to the hospital, and just him still waving at his fans in like his gloves. It was just incredible. And I have seen some people like complain, like, yeah, there are a lot of scenes where like he'll visit kids in the hospital, he'll visit burn victims. And some people are saying like, oh, look at it, we just have to show how good of a person he was and like how he visited all these sick kids. I'm like, but but he did do that. So I mean, like, what do you want? This is about his story, and that's one of the things that he did. So it's like I don't I could see, yeah, it could be a little repetitive because maybe they have a little too many scenes, especially for what's only a 2 hour movie. But I mean, I would say that they worked very well. And of course, you can't talk about this movie without talking about the music. Just I I love the music in this movie. It's fantastic. I mean, obviously, it's Michael Jackson. Like, of course, it's going to be incredible. But it's more like just the way we see it, like how he was wanted to do Thriller by some like horror movies he watched as a kid, and him just being fascinated by that. It's just so cool, and just seeing them recreate the Thriller dance was just like there were several times in this movie where I was like kind of just dancing in my seat because I mean, of course, the music's gonna be insanely catchy, and all the scenes are just so much fun to watch. It just makes for just an excellent experience. And of course, when he's actually on stage, it's like, wow. Jafar really captures the magic that Michael had in just seeing the fans go crazy, seeing the moonwalking, the dancing, the singing. It's just, it's great. But I do have just a couple of complaints. Overall, like I really enjoyed this movie, and like I said, I am a little biased because I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan. There's a lot of great Michael Jackson music, but like I said, I really did enjoy the dynamic between Michael and Joseph, and I think that some people are kind of leaving that out because I think that that's like the emotional core of the movie. But I will say that some of the pacing, it just moves a little too fast. And I know this movie was originally going to be like 3+ hours, almost 4 hours, and they had to cut into, and now we're going to get a sequel. So it does feel a little like quick. And I do agree it should have probably been a little bit longer. And I think that like one of my complaints is its ending is so abrupt. Like we get a performance of Bad, and I mean, it's great, but then at the end of it, it's just the movie ends, and you're like, wait, why did it just end? It feels like there wasn't that big of a climax to this movie, although they did a good job at, because the villain of this movie is essentially Joseph, and the conflict is between Michael and his father. If with it climaxing of him essentially firing his father and then being on his own, it does make for like a like, oh wow, okay, that's a cool ending. Michael put his foot down, now he's in charge of himself. Like in ways it has that finality to it because of that scene, but when it goes right into the performance of Bad, it feels a little off. You're like, wait, why did the movie just end? It felt kind of rushed towards the ending. And another complaint, like, I mean, like you've heard before, the siblings, like, a lot of his siblings, like Tito, I mean, Janet's not even in this movie. They don't really get any development, and they're more just, they're background characters, which they're barely even characters. They're just there because, I mean, well, obviously Michael Jackson had siblings and he was a part of the Jackson 5. But they just don't really seem like they did anything. They seem less like characters and more like props. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie. And like I'm going to keep saying, I am biased because I'm just a huge Michael Jackson fan. But I just had a blast with this movie. The music is obviously incredible. I think that Jafar was incredible. And like I said, I really enjoyed the dynamic between Michael and Joseph. That's what carries this movie. It just has, when you have an actor like Colman Domingo, who just has such a presence whenever he's in the room, and he's genuinely scary when just his interactions with Michael, it's just terrifying. And of course, like we see the abuse. We know what, I mean, terrible person he is, and him essentially being the villain and the conflict that Michael has to overcome. I think it works for the story that they told. So overall, I had a really fun time with this movie. The music obviously is incredible. The performances are great. And it's just such a fun time at the movies. Like, if you're watching this in a theater, like, I can't see how you're not going to have a fun time. Overall, I really liked it.